Hi guys, in this episode of Plummies Thoughts On, I am excited to be sharing my thoughts to the second episode of the new Walking Dead spin-off, The Walking Dead Dead City, with the episode's name being Who's There? A reference to probably the best scene of this spin-off so far, which I'm really excited to talk about. But before we get there, since there isn't really enough that I want to say in regards to two topics that are connected to the Walking Dead universe, I've decided to just share my thoughts in regards to them in this video. Especially because this particular episode of Dead City wasn't the longest. It barely ended up being like 39 minutes, and it's not like the most content or plot-filled episode either, so I don't feel like I have quite as much to say about this episode as I did for the last one, so this is going to be a nice way to kind of pad out the episode. And the things that I want to talk about a little bit are two things in regards to the future of the Walking Dead universe, or more specifically, two pieces of future Walking Dead universe content, that being Fear the Walking Dead Season 8's B, the second half, the final 6 episodes of Fear the Walking Dead, and the upcoming Walking Dead Daryl Dixon spin-off. And I want to talk about them because at the end of the first half of Season 8 of Fear the Walking Dead, we got a little bit of a teaser for obviously the second half. And then there was even more teasers when you had the showrunners kind of explaining the first half, and like in the episode Insider stuff, you get some more glimpses of potentially what could be the trailer or teaser trailer for the second half that I really want to talk about. And I would have done a proper video covering like a teaser trailer with like a shot-by-shot kind of thing, but there isn't a proper trailer. It's just a bunch of trailer-esque shots dispersed in between talking by the showrunners. And I don't really care about anything the showrunners have to say, not because I hate them necessarily or anything, but more so because I don't want showrunners to influence how I see stuff in regards to the show. But yeah, I want to talk a little bit about some of the things that you can see in those teaser stuff, where for example, one of the things that I want to mention is that after the last episode, I thought that potentially we were not gonna see Dwight and Sherry in the second half, because it felt like in the final episode of the first half of Season 8, it kind of felt like the showrunners were kind of wrapping up their reboot of Fear, with Lenny James having left the show in that episode, and Dwight and Sherry's kid dying in that episode. It kind of felt that maybe that was going to be the final episode we'd ever see them, especially since Dwight said that he was gonna go back home. And we get a little bit of a glimpse of potentially what their episode in the second half could be, with my assumption being that they might actually leave the show, and there will be one episode which focuses on them like going back to Alexandria and stuff, because I believe in some of the teasers there is a shot of them being at the sanctuary. At least I think it's the sanctuary or something. I'm not 100% sure, but it would actually be cool if they do go back to the sanctuary and end up at the Commonwealth or something there. And it would make sense because, despite the fact that I mentioned this like multiple times, apparently there is going to be one episode in the second half of the final season that is going to be written by the showrunners of the show. I thought there wasn't, but there is. And it would make sense that that episode is going to be that. The one featuring Dwight and Sherry. Since I have been under the assumption that the second half is going to be wholly focused on the OG Fear characters, aka Madison Strand, Daniel, Luciana, Troy, which we pretty much have a confirmation that it's fucking Troy, that he is alive, and that he's gonna be in the second half of season 8, because we have a shot of Madison lunging with a hammer towards somebody, and come on, it's gotta be fucking him. So that's really cool. That's all very exciting. But another thing that I actually did not know that they were going to be doing in the second half, and I did not expect that I would be excited about, that I would be able to be excited about, is apparently we're getting snow? I don't know. There are some shots in the teasers showing kind of like snowy weather and frozen walkers, and I've seen people talk about as if we are gonna be getting frozen walkers. And as a big fan of episode 16 of season 9 of the main show, aka the snowstorm episode, I love that episode, one of my favorite, if not my favorite Walking Dead episode, if I gotta be honest. I would not mind to see some more frozen walkers, you know? It's not like having snow automatically makes like the episodes good or whatever, but it's just something that we don't really get that much, and it's a miracle that we even got that one in the main show. So if we get even a glimpse of that, in Fear the Walking Dead as well, it would be so cool. And I really do hope we actually get like some snow like we got in the main show, because I really love that episode, and we fucking deserve that shit, more of that shit, man. But yeah, basically that's what makes me really excited about the second half of the final season of Fear the Walking Dead, far more than I ever was for the first half, if I gotta be honest. But you never know, Fear the Walking Dead does have the habit of making the trailers look good and then the seasons not so great. And yeah, it might have taken a little bit too long to talk about my excitement for the second half of the final season of Fear, but I also want to mention some excitement that I have for the Walking Dead Daryl Dixon spin-off. Because in preparation for me recording this video, in between me watching the episode of Dead City, the episode 2 of Dead City, and sitting down to review it, we got a teaser and a sneak peek of the said Daryl Dixon spin-off. And so far, I'm liking what I'm seeing, man. I mean, I have this one issue that also kind of is a little bit of an issue for Dead City as well. That being, where's the variants, bitch? Like, what happened to the variants? But other than that, I'm really liking the way they seem to be doing the Daryl Dixon spin-off. I mean, I've said it, I feel like multiple times, that is the spin-off that I'm most excited about. Whereas, like, for Dead City was the spin-off that I was least interested about, and the Rick and Michonne spin-off was the spin-off that I think it's probably gonna be actually the best. But the Daryl Dixon spin-off is the most exciting for me because it's set in Europe, which is where I'm from, and even though it's still far from my country, it's still in Europe, and it just feels closer to home, and I kind of like that, you know? I'm just really excited about it, but I actually really like what they're doing stylistically with the spin-off based on that sneak peek. It's not much to go off of necessarily, but the vibes that I'm getting, the ideas, like the kind of, I guess, point of view that they're going for it is actually really cool. Because look at Dead City, for example. It's very actiony, and it's very much focused on the action and the spectacle and the violence and everything. Even like the opening theme of the show very much tells you that that's what it's going to be, because it's a very action kind of theme. In comparison, the Daryl Dixon show feels more subdued and a little bit more emotional, you know? Which is honestly kind of weird to think about, because it is Daryl, not really the most emotional guy. But I don't know. I feel like that's probably the reason why the Daryl Dixon show feels more like the main show than Dead City does, because Dead City to me feels more like Fear the Walking Dead, weirdly enough, than it does the main show. Because I feel like the main show does have like a lot of these kind of introspective moments where you just hear like the soundtrack and you can just look at characters just doing stuff and surviving in the zombie apocalypse. Like, think of, for example, back in like season 4 of the main show, when you can see Bob just walking around and surviving, and you can hear the song, a Blackbird song, play in the background. Or in the Governor two-parter, when you have the Governor just walking around and you have that track play as well. That's the kind of vibe that you get from that sneak peek of the Daryl Dixon spin-off, with him walking around Europe, with the soundtrack that plays, which is honestly really, really good. I love the sound that they're playing there. It sounds so good. Some of the shots remind me a lot of the Lord of the Rings, so that's honestly kind of a neat reference there that I really, really like. But yeah, that's honestly one thing that I feel like I've been missing a little bit from Dead City. Like I said, the kind of like more subdued, introspective moments that I've really, really liked in the main show, which I feel like kind of started disappearing towards the end of it. That's one of the reasons, I guess, season 10 and 11 weren't necessarily as entertaining as season 9 and previous, but yeah, I like that. And honestly, that kind of makes the Daryl Dixon spin-off feel like more of like a true sequel of The Walking Dead compared to Dead City, because it feels like it actually stylistically is like a sequel. But again, we're probably still gonna have to wait and see. Maybe there's gonna be some more different vibes thrown into it. It might feel more actiony. Who knows what the opening theme is going to be. But I'm definitely even more hyped about that spin-off than I already was, so there's that. And I believe we are supposed to get a trailer for it at, like, Comic-Con, which I guess means at the end of, like, July? Or June? I don't know. I'm not an American. I don't know when the fuck Comic-Con is. I just know it's vaguely during the summer, so I assume the end of July. But I am excited for it. I'll definitely do a reaction to it. But yeah, very, very exciting stuff going forward for the Walking Dead universe. I am more positive than I have been in a long time, so even as a fan of The Walking Dead, I will say it's been a little stilted for the last couple of years, which I'm glad that stiltedness is starting to disappear for one reason or another. But yeah, now that we have gotten the unrelated stuff out of the way, I think it's time to get into the meat of this video. That being my review of episode 2 of Dead City, Who's There? And with a title like this, and what I said in the beginning of the video, that is the reference to the best scene of the episode, which is when we see old Negan show up again. And boy, do I love that scene. With that scene, for me, honestly, Negan has solidified himself as, like, the best character ever. Like, he's so fucking entertaining. So far, he's the most entertaining part of this spin-off for me, for sure. And maybe by the end of this season, I might like Armstrong a lot. I don't know, depends on where they go with his character, I guess. Maybe I'll end up really, really liking the Croat as well. Who knows? But as it stands, Negan is the one character that I can just expect to be entertained by every scene that he is in. He just carries it so well. Like, he's carrying the show on his back. I don't want to, like, shade Lauren Cohan or anything. I don't think she's a bad actress. And there's a lot of subdued acting in this episode, because it's kind of like an episode focused on Negan and has Maggie react a lot of the time without really saying much. So she does a really good job there as well, but Negan just takes the cake, man. He's so good in this episode. And in this spin-off so far, he's been amazing. But I especially really enjoy him in this episode, and that scene, I will get to it, but for me, that's the only thing that I care about, honestly, in this episode, because the rest of it is just kind of whatever. Which is one of my biggest issues with this episode. Like, despite the fact that I don't think it was like a boring episode necessarily, or a bad episode necessarily, it didn't really have quite as much stuff happen in it as the previous one. Which kind of makes me mad a little bit, because how could you have 6 episodes in a season and still do filler? And I'm not even necessarily saying that these episode was actually filler, because there's a lot of necessary character building and introduction of stuff in this episode that you needed to do for the rest of the story to work. But at the same time, it just feels like a waste of time, because I don't care about certain aspects that are focused on in this episode, you know? This is why I think people who argue in favor of shorter seasons are fucking stupid. Because assuming that the writers will actually make the episodes that they have left tighter and will do actually more story with less filler if they have less episode is bullshit. Obviously, there's a balance between having too many episodes and too few. Because, like, I'm not saying that the writers need to do 22 episodes per season or whatever, because that's ridiculous as well. There's just not enough content for that many episodes. But at least, when you have 22 episodes, for example, or 24, or whatever, there's far more room for really, really good episodes, rather than when you have 6. Like, the pressure is far bigger for those 6 episodes to be exceptional. And it hurts far more when those episodes are bad. Which is why, as much as I love this episode, I'm also really fucking disappointed, because it was so much of a waste of time. And like, yeah, it was important to, I guess, build Pearlie Armstrong's character in this episode by having him go and look for the place where his brother used to live, to build up his relationship and care for his brother, I guess. And to have him connect to the Croat in this episode. Like, that's important stuff. It's important to introduce the group that Maggie and Negan end up working with and saving the ass off in this episode. It's important to introduce him here. But it still feels like a filler episode, is what I'm trying to say. Even if it was actually doing important stuff. And because of that, the only actually important stuff that actually felt like it progressed something in some way, shape, or form was that scene with Negan. Which was awesome. It was hilarious. It was badass. It was brutal, gruesome. A little corny, but I feel like with Negan, it needs to be corny for it to work, you know? So, for me, it honestly really, really worked. I enjoyed the dialogue there. I love... I honestly didn't realize how much I've missed this version of Negan. Because, like, I've been enjoying Negan just fine, even as he has went on his, like, redemption arc or whatever. I don't understand some of the criticisms that people have had for him. Being boring, becoming boring with his redemption arc. But I definitely understand people who miss the old Negan, you know? Because he's so fun. He's just fun to watch. And I really, really love that scene there. And there's a lot of interesting insight that people have gotten from that scene, that I have gotten from that scene, that has also fueled a lot of really interesting theories and speculation about where the story or the plot of this season could go. Because in this scene, it basically confirms that the maniacal, entertained by brutality persona that Negan has whenever he killed Glenn and Abraham was a persona. He is not actually like quite a sadistic and brutality loving bastard as he might have made himself look like. It is a persona that he uses to protect people. In this episode, it's pretty much confirmed, because the second he finishes doing that, he feels terrible, especially with Maggie having seen what he just did. And Maggie, on the other hand, now is on the other side of that persona, whereas before she was a victim of that persona, now she is protected by that persona. So maybe now she will realize and have a little bit more understanding of where Negan comes from. And I've read a really interesting theory that potentially by the end of the season, she might end up being in a situation where she has to do what Negan did all those years ago and bash somebody's head in front of their family member or whatever, to really put her in Negan's shoes. And it's a cool concept, honestly, cool idea. I wouldn't mind them going in that direction, but we'll see, I guess. But yeah, it's a really, really cool scene. The one thing that I don't like is kind of, I guess, the way the scene starts there with the killing of the pigeon lady, which just felt fucking telegraphed from a mile away, and it's a fucking way of doing things that The Walking Dead universe just fucking loves doing all the fucking time, to the point that it just doesn't work on me. Or at least it doesn't work on me unless it's Fear the Walking Dead doing it, because for some reason they've become fucking masters of that craft. But yeah, The Walking Dead does love killing their cats, basically, as it is, because that's what it's called whenever you introduce a likable character in a story, have your characters get attached to that character, and then kill that character, thus enraging the main characters, you know? That's what that lady was. Her death fueled Negan's anger that he unleashed on the Croats people there, in that really, really cool and funny scene. But yeah, that's kind of all I have to say in regards to this episode outright. Like, I will have to go through my notes for anything else that I have to say. Just because, again, there's just not really much plot that got moved along. There's things that happen, there's moments that are interesting, and again, I wouldn't even call this a bad episode. It still felt surprisingly entertaining. But there just wasn't much moving forward, and it just made the episode feel like a filler, which is really, really annoying, because we only have 6 episodes, and you still have stupid filler like this, you know? But yeah, let's get through my notes. So the first thing I've written is, the Telltale vibes continue. And I believe that is in particular to that scene where Negan and Maggie are climbing a very high ladder, which I believe is in an elevator shaft. That straight up reminds me of the same kind of situation, I guess, as in the 5th episode of the first season of the Telltale games, where Lee, Kenny, and a bunch of other characters of the game end up climbing to the roof of a hospital through an elevator shaft's ladder like that. That was really, really cool. I don't know if these references to Telltale's The Walking Dead are intentional though, but I am here for it. I do like them a lot. So, the next thing I've written is, I am Negan. I love him so much. Like, he's so entertaining. I already talked about it, so I'm not really gonna add anything else to this. Next thing I've written is, that's scary. Is Maggie afraid of heights? Of course she refuses his help. That is obviously in connection to the scene where Maggie is on the zip line, and she gets stuck right before she gets to the other side, to the other building, and she refuses Negan's help. So there's a bunch of things that I want to talk about here in regards to that node. It is very scary seeing her dangle like that that high above walkers down below, and it's scary for me because I have a little bit of a fear of heights. Not really. I wouldn't really call it like a quite a phobia, because I don't fear it as much, but I definitely have at least a mild phobia, with my mom having a far major one. I probably have gotten that phobia from her. But I do have a little bit of a fear of heights, especially when you're either dangling like that, or whatever, or I am on like a high place with nothing to hold onto. That's the scariest for me, because I feel like I will fall. Like, I feel like I cannot keep balance and I cannot stay in one place. I would just keep like sliding around. Like, that's how it feels for me. So it is pretty terrifying, but it does feel a little bit contrived that she apparently has a fear of heights, because there was a little bit of a weird scene when they were climbing the ladder in the before they got to the zip line, where she clearly portrayed like a fear of heights there. It's just really kind of contrived and convenient how both Carol and Maggie kind of have phobias, with Carol's phobia being like claustrophobia, and Maggie having all of a sudden whatever the word for height phobia is, I don't remember. Especially because, at least in the case of Carol, it was mentioned all the way back in season 1, but with Maggie, it's never been pointed out that she has like fear of heights or anything. So that comes a little bit out of nowhere, but it's fine. I don't mind that, because that's just giving your characters more characterization. So I like learning about characters like that. It's cool. And again, there's also the fact that she refuses his help, which is really fucking annoying, because remember in season 11 when he didn't help her when she fell off of the train when they were in the tunnels? So does she want his help or not? It's just a little bit hypocritical is all. But yeah, the next thing I've written is that new hilltop? I like the vibe. Some people have pointed out that it kind of looks a little bit like Terminus, that it might be the same place, although it wouldn't make any sense because Terminus was in Georgia and New Hilltop is at best in New York, the state. So yeah, I kind of like the vibe. It feels a little bit more like an interesting location, I guess, because it's one of those places which I don't know how to describe it, but it's one of those places which you just think about how could you fortify it in the case of a zombie apocalypse once you go past it. Like, for example, in my small town, there's 2 schools. One that is old, one that is completely crumbling and falling apart, and there's a newer one. The old one is the one that my parents went in, and the newer one is the one that I went to. But every time I go past any of those schools, 2 schools, I look at the yard, which has high fences, and it just makes me think about how protected it would be in the case of zombie apocalypse. And this location with the brick walls and everything and the factory-ish kind of setting just makes me think of... It just makes me think of like a post-apocalyptic zombie base compared to Hilltop, which didn't really quite feel like that, Funny that I say that this episode is more fillery than the last episode, considering the next thing that I've written, which is I already love this more than last week's episode. Which, I mean, again, it's not like there wasn't exciting stuff happening in this episode. There just wasn't as much plot movement, Next thing I've written is Pigeon Lady. What? The lady from Home Alone? That clearly feels like a reference to that, with this being in New York. So, kind of a neat reference there. Next thing I've written is, I love me some fresh walkers, man. Which I believe is a reference to the scene where Purley Armstrong wakes up after being knocked out by Maggie last episode, and you see his partner being a fresh zombie. There's definitely a little bit of a guttural punch that you get when you see like a fresh zombie that you don't get with the long decayed ones. And I've had a little bit of a criticism with the show, kind of forgetting how to do, I guess, barely decayed walkers. Because even in like supposed flashbacks that are supposed to be like 12 years ago, which is like in the early months of the zombie apocalypse, you still have like clearly years old decayed zombies. Both in the main show we've had that issue, in the Here's the Negan episode, and in Fear the Walking Dead's recent 8th season we had one episode with a flashback where similarly the walkers were way too decayed for the time period that they're supposed to be from. So it was nice to see a fresh walker done properly for once. The next thing I've written is, cool transition from Jeannie to Herschel, very Telltale-like. And yeah, another very Telltale-like vibe that I got from that scene, which was, the transition especially reminded me, I believe, of the final season of the Telltale game, with the way how the camera moved away from the character, and you see the color change a little bit, and it turns out it has transitioned to a flashback. That's something similar that happened in, I believe, the first or second episode of the final season of Telltale. So that was pretty cool. Next thing I've written is, man, why did they pick the worst looking shots of NYC for the trailer when what we are seeing in the show looks so much better? This is in reference to the fact that, as you may have seen in my trailer reactions to Dead City, I didn't feel like the CGI looked that great in the trailer. And obviously, the CGI in the show might look better once we see some of those shots that we saw in the trailer. The CGI just didn't look that great in the trailer. The shots didn't look convincing to me. It just felt like digital shots that anybody could have made, like shots that I would use for like inspiration for my ongoing zombie story, Dead Inside. Like, just, they look like proxy images almost. But the actual shots that we got in this episode looked honestly far more convincing than any of the shots in the trailer. I don't know why, but for some reason they picked the worst ones, which is, I guess, not necessarily the worst idea, because you actually keep the best for the show, and you've lowered my expectations enough to the point where I actually am able to take these still not amazing shots, whereas if you didn't give me like that bad shots in the trailer, I might have been more critical of the shots that we actually got in the episode, but who knows. It is what it is. Next thing I've written is, damn, that's dark. Seeing his brother's corpse. That is in relation to the sequence and the scene in particular where Purley finds the decaying corpse of his brother who has killed himself after all these years in the zombie apocalypse. And yeah, that particular part of the episode, I think it's necessary, and I think in retrospect I might like more after like getting interested into the character more and everything, and maybe actually ended up liking him. But as it stands, it felt a little bit too much of a like waste of time where nothing happened, but it was still kind of cool to see like the environments and stuff, so and the set pieces and stuff, so I'm not complaining too much. But that also kind of felt a little bit Telltale-like, because it's literally the same kind of scene that happens in the first season, I believe in like episode 5. So there's that. Next thing written is R.I.P. Pigeon Lady. Of course. Next thing written is that smile. That damn smile. That smile where Negan comes out of the darkness. You just know that old Negan is back. and I really like this. Next thing I've written is that Sacha Baron Cohen? And here I'm talking about the guy that Negan calls Neckbeard, because he does genuinely looks like Sacha Baron Cohen wearing just like prosthetics and makeup and everything. It looks so much like him, and he does that. So yeah, it would be a cool like cameo, I guess. Next thing I've written is haha Neckbeard, and the final thing that I've written is damn classic Negan. And yeah, that's kind of where I fucking stopped writing stuff. I don't think there's anything much that happens even after this scene, but I just didn't really have anything to say after that, because that scene was just so good. I love the brutality of it. I love how funny it is. I love what it means for the character, and I love what it means for Maggie's character. It was just all around great. It just shows me that this show did have guts. I've never been so wrong about it, I think, in my whole damn life. Because I thought this show was gonna be maybe kind of boring and maybe a little forgettable and kind of bland. I still expected it to be decent and good, but well, it's still very much kind of like in line with my expectation. It's also more competent and less stilted, basically not really stilted at all, compared to what I thought it was gonna be. Because I thought it would feel unnecessary and it would feel kind of bland, I think is the ultimately best descriptor for how I thought it was going to be. And it still has those aspects and those criticisms for it, but they are far, 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 far less prominent than I ever thought they were going to be, you know? It's like I thought it was going to be like they were gonna be prominent in terms of like an 8 out of 10, like, or a 6 out of 10. But it turns out those things as issues are like a 1 out of 10. Like it's basically not an issue for me. But yeah, it was a fun episode. I just feel like it could have been better. In retrospect, like I said, it might actually turn out to be a far better episode than I feel it is right now. But I'm still going to judge it by the standards that I have for it right now. And in terms of a rating, I think I'm going to go with an 8.4 out of 10. It's been a while, so I don't really remember what I rated the first episode, but right now I would probably rate it an 8.6 out of 10, so there's that. I think I might have given it a 9 out of 10, but yeah, right now it would be a more of an 8.6 out of 10, but I also don't disagree with a 9 out of 10 either. Though, for this episode, like I said, it's gonna be an 8.4 out of 10 because there's just too little plot movement. There's just some too obvious, like, writer's tricks being employed in this episode, aka the killing of the pigeon lady. And just unnecessary but boring introduction of a bunch of characters that I don't really care about, so there's that as well. That just kind of drags the episode down for me, but it's fine. Like I said, for all the criticisms that I might have for Dead City, I just cannot overstate how much I love the fact that the show just doesn't feel stilted. Because I don't know what it has been about the Walking Dead universe in the last, like, 2 or 3 years. Maybe it's COVID, maybe it's not. I don't know, but I feel like for the longest time, I've had to always have caveats when it comes to my enjoyment of any of the shows. Like, I've always had to, like, go out of my way to kind of be more positive on the episodes than negative. Whereas here, like, even if it has issues, it just still feels good. It still feels high quality, you know? Whereas before, I would have to say, yeah, it has issues, but it's good. It's kind of hard to describe, but it just, the best way I can put it is that it doesn't feel stilted. And it used to feel stilted. And I'm glad that it doesn't, because it gives me hope for the other spin-offs as well. And for even future spin-offs. But yeah, I think that's all I have to say in regards to Fear the Walking Dead, the Daryl Dixon Show, and Dead City. So I'm curious what you guys have to say in regards to those topics as well. So comment with all of your thoughts down below, and let's have a discussion about this. And also, before we end this video, I just want to give a huge shout out to my currently 6 patrons on Patreon. Omar Richmond, Deadpool, Corby Dead, Dane Harty, Peyton Jones, and Jason Christmas. Thank you guys for your support, I really appreciate it. It really means a lot to me to have decided to support me, have continued to support me such a long time. Hope you continue to enjoy my content and continue to support me going forward. Thank you very much. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, please leave a like, subscribe. Also, check out the links in the description to my Wattpad, where I post my stories, because in addition to doing all these videos on my channel, I'm also a writer. And if you enjoy my stories or simply enjoy my videos, you can head over to my Patreon or to my Ko-fi account, where you can pledge your support and help get the channel going, help support me so I can keep writing the stories you enjoy. But if you don't want to do any of that, that's completely fine. You can still help me out in other ways, like liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and especially sharing this video with somebody who you think might enjoy. And I think it's pretty much it for this video, so hopefully I'm gonna see you in the next one. Bye!